Also, again, people don't use that, so we have similar homegrown platforms like Jepan and other platforms as well. So again, as a lot of you also know, things change very fast in China. So between last year this time and this year, a lot of new players came into play already, but also even within these existing players, a lot of changes has happened as well. So this year, although a lot of those platforms, they still exist, but users are increasingly concentrating their time and kind of consolidating. Some consolidations is going on across different platforms. So I would say this year, the main stars in terms of where people are spending, consumers are spending most of their time, are probably these three platforms. So Sina Weibo, so again, this is the company I'm from. So within the 4 Weibo platforms I mentioned earlier, we accounted about 85% of the market in terms of time spent. So this is pretty much, I think, within Weibo, I think we're lucky enough to be the winner there. And in the online video platform space, Youku and Tudou announced a merger, an acquisition of actually Youku over Tudou last year. So they actually now, the 2 largest video platforms became one, although they still kind of go through the integration. So that, you see some consolidation there as well. And probably a lot of you guys have also heard of WeChat. I actually know people are using WeChat here. I'm not going to talk about them today. I don't know who they are, but apparently a lot of people use that. So anyway, obviously this is a chatting online communication tool, and so it's gaining a lot of popularities there as well. So, but I think when you look across these different social media platforms, and I think if you put your consumer's hat on the side for a while and think about how do I use these things for business, I think that suddenly also becomes a different question. Because a lot of the social media platforms, while they can be great consumer products, they don't necessarily always offer marketing value for brands. So I think that Sina Weibo still offers the most marketing potential for business. And so that's what I'm really interested in telling you more about today. So what is Sina Weibo? In case some of you don't quite know what Sina Weibo is, or you've heard of Sina Weibo, but you don't really know what it is. So before we really dive in, so I want to give you a really quick overview of what that is. So Sina Weibo started about 3 years ago as a Twitter-like microblogging platform. So pretty much all of you, I assume, know what Twitter is. But I think over the last 3 years, actually the platform has evolved greatly. So now we have multiple platforms people can access that. So started off from the desktop version, still a lot of people use that, but now we have the mobile client and as well as the iPad on the pads. And the mobile, obviously, just like Facebook and other social media platforms, more and more people are using the mobile device to access the platform. About 72 to 75% of our users will access Weibo through mobile. Not necessarily exclusively. Some of them obviously will still use the desktop, but 72% of them actually will access through mobile. So a lot of third-party research companies, they have done a lot of published white papers and things like that, and they've called Sina Weibo as the most influential social media platform in China. So why is that? So I want to share some of the reasons with you, and Mark sort of stole my thunder a little bit by announcing the 500 million users. So that's the user count we released to the street at the end of last year. So again, that number is probably wrong already. As I'm standing here today, it's continued to grow because I remember the quarter before that, we had about 350 million. So over one quarter, we grew another 150 million users there. So over 500 million users right now on the platform, and they're actually spending a lot of time on the platform as well. So the active users, on average, they spend over 90 minutes per day accessing Weibo and talking to friends, discovering news, all that stuff. So what are they doing on the, within that 90 minutes? So obviously a lot of interactions, a lot of posts. So on every day, average, there's over 135 million posts that's being generated on Weibo through different devices, obviously. Now, second thing is, are these valuable customers? Are these valuable consumers? So we have a lot of people in China, as you know, 1.7 billion, and probably not every one of them is the target audience that you want to reach. So who are these consumers? So from a geographic location perspective, they're mostly from Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities. So if you know the kind of the China development, so we have different tiers of cities, I think Tier 1 through Tier 5 or 6. And the lower the tiers, the higher the, in terms of economic development, the more money consumers will have in these cities. So Tier 1, Tier 2 cities are the most developed cities in China. So again, so as you can see, most of the users are from those cities with the spending power. I know that in New Zealand that we try to position New Zealand as the premium luxury destination. You probably want to target these people who can afford the journey, who can afford the experience. And they're also quite young. So 92% of those people were born after 1980s. So as you can see the breakout here, as some of you know, I don't belong in that 92%. So, but don't ignore that 8% of the users on the platform. We like to come to New Zealand as well. So, so anyway, so these, but most of these users are fairly young, and they're not only young, they're also very well educated. So 56% of these users have bachelor degrees or above, right? So these are the people who, probably also like to travel and learn more about the world, and so that's another stat I want to share with you. So those slides, hopefully, I just share with you, give you a sense of what Weibo is, what kind of consumers and customers that platform provides, potentially for the business. So is that relevant for brands? So, right, because as I said earlier, I think a lot of the social media platforms now can become very popular among consumers, but not necessarily provides opportunities to brands. I think, to me, I think WeChat probably faces a similar challenge there, because if I'm having a very close conversation with my friend, what is the opportunity for brands to really insert yourself and talk to me? Because, so some of that, I think for brands, you need to start thinking about that. So maybe the next question I want to help you to address is, are all these things relevant for you, for brands? So let's look at some stats again. So this was a study done by Weibo and Beijing University, one of the leading universities in China last year. So 85% of the Chinese consumers, they actively discuss news events, products, and brands with others on Weibo. So again, they're not just talking about, oh, what did you eat last night, or what did you cook, or where did you go? They're actually actively talking about your brands. Maybe they're talking about, for large brands, they talk about the quality of your products, they talk about whether they like it or not. If they participate, if they came to New Zealand, they took some tours, they're likely to talk about that as well. So as you can see, it's, so this, a lot of conversations are brand and business related. And this is another study done by McKinsey. So 67% of the consumers, in terms of the buying decision, is not influenced by what you say as a brand. Rather, they're influenced by the word of mouth. So again, 67% of people, whether they decide to take your tour or not, whether they decide to come here or not, is not necessarily because they go to your account, your official account, and listen to you, but they also, again, through social media, and listen to what other people have said. Other people have bought your stuff, and again, that word of mouth influenced their purchase decision. And 66% of the social media users follow brands. So we saw that earlier, 500 million users on Weibo. So over 2/3 of those people will follow brand. And on average, they follow 8 brands. So again, they not only follow a few, one or a couple, but they actually follow a lot of brands. And so they tend to want to hear from brands as well. So again, this is another way of looking at what we saw earlier in terms of these massive users from the top tier cities, the young and educated people, how much spending power they represent. So they represent 54% of the spending power among the Chinese consumers. And that equates to 800 billion RMB consumption each month. So obviously this is trends, so I want to zoom in a little bit, take a closer look on the travel industry in terms of how Weibo is relevant for travel. So a lot of you probably have seen similar stats like this. Chinese tourists continue to, the tourism industry in general continues to grow in China. And if you break out between the domestic Chinese travel and outbound travel, as you can see, both portion will grow significantly. In terms of the number of trips, as you can see, is probably somewhere between 130 to 150% increase. And with the outbound travel actually increase even faster than domestic travel. But when you look at the market value, so not only people are taking more trips, they're spending more money. So this is over 267% in terms of domestic travel, and almost 400% increase from 2010 to 2020 in terms of outbound travel. So again, the travel industry in general is growing very rapidly in China. And then when we look back onto the Weibo side, so all these people, a lot of them, they also show interest in travel. So 45.8 million travel organization fans. So what does that mean? That means when we count all the people who have followed travel-related business accounts on Weibo, so the unique users are almost 46 million users are following these travel-related accounts. And 21.6 million of the users on our Weibo platform tag themselves with interest in travel. So when you set up a Weibo account, there are those interest tags that you can tag yourself. So travel, again, obviously is one of the most popular one. People tag themselves. And there are 2.2 million travel influencers. So what I mean by that is these are the people who, just like bloggers and key opinion leaders, as you are probably accustomed to or know about that concept. So these are the people who actively talking about travel-related stuff. They also probably tend to have a lot of followers. So these are the people who can influence other people as well. So over 2 million of this kind of a travel influence exists on the Weibo platform. So when we look at conversation related to travel industry, so average daily posts is over 5 million, so within last year. So again, that's obviously a reflection of the stats that we saw earlier, because all these people are interested in travel. A lot of people are talking about that. So if you just zoom into the travel related conversation, that's a tremendous amount of conversation there as well. And if we further break that down, and these are all from one of the white papers that we did last year. So when we look at how people are talking or doing travel-related activities on the social media platform, on Weibo, at different stages within their travel, from planning to the actual trip, as you can see, these are some top activities, what people do before travel. So pretty obvious, but they search for the routes, tips, strategies. So 85% of the survey respondents, they would say they do that, right? So if you go down the list, you can see a lot of other common activities such as search destination information, travel reviews, hotels, airline deals, request information from the travel organization. So again, this is where when you have the Weibo account on there, people are not only reading what you do, they will also at you and actively, and they may be asking questions. So brands, not only remember this is a dialogue, all right? So it's not just you say what you want to say, people are talking to you, you need to respond as well, because people are requesting information and asking questions about that. Linking with travel buddies, although only 22%, but I think that's actually pretty Chinese unique characteristics as well. So when I moved back to China, and a lot of times people are traveling with strangers to different places. Now, strangers, in a sense, they probably don't know each other earlier, but through the social network, different portals and things like that, they found that they have similar common interests in terms of where they want to go, what kind of trips that they like, and they will form a team and they will form a group, that will go to different places. So again, this is very social behavior as well in terms of how people are planning their trips. And also we saw that travel influencers, there are a lot of them, and they also will be requested information from others, because these are the people who really know a lot about travel. So as you can see, a lot of these activities, people are doing all these activities prior to their actual trip when they plan. So a lot of the activities already started on their social media platform. And then when we move into during the trip, as you can see, again, people are glued to the social media platform even when they're on the road, and they post the travel pictures, travel emotions, they're happy and whatever. They check into different places, interact with fans and other people requesting for information again, or complaints. So if they had a bad experience, and they want to voice that immediately. Interact with the tourism boards and travel. So again, as you can see, the posting the travel pictures is 90% of the tourists would like to do that. So I have a little story to tell you. So one of the complaints that I've been made most during this trip in New Zealand is I've been complaining to people that you don't have enough Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi spots in New Zealand. So, and it's a frustrating experience for me and for a lot of, I think, international travelers, because I have a lot of pictures and I can't share that with my friends at the moment when I take them, because I really do want to share with my friends. The happy ending for that story is, so I'm staying at the Sky City, and I think one night over dinner I was talking to the GM of the Sky City, and they told me yesterday they started offering free Wi-Fi in the hotel, actually without the login process, without the login step. Now before they technically offer the free Wi-Fi as well, but you have to log in and it gets disconnected all the time. But yesterday when I walk into the hotel, it's automatically log in. I don't have to log in again. And that was just that one simple little improvement. But honestly, I think the impact on me, as a tourist, you feel great because you're connected and you can do these things as what tourists want to do. So this is where I think, just the reason I want to tell that story is just hopefully give you something to think about in terms of when we have these consumer insights, these are what people want to do. What can you do as a tourism industry to provide that better service, for consumers, because they're not there just to, on their own as individuals to experience. They also want to share that. So I think anything that you can do around that to help the tourists to really enjoy their trip and also to share that experience, I think not only make them happy, because the social media power, as you know, they are being your brand ambassador at that moment because they are sharing their experience with their friends. So again, just think about that for a second, if you will. So again, that was during the trip. So after the trip, so again, these are probably pretty common. This a lot of you guys will do anyway. So this is where you put together the photo collage, and then you write reviews, you consolidate different issues. So again, so obviously that whole travel experience, the whole social experience continues even after the trip ends. So again, up to this point, hopefully you have no doubts why social media is such a phenomenon in China. Hopefully you know that the platform, the Sina Weibo platform, really has a lot of those target audience that you want to reach, and it's relevant for travel. So I think maybe the next question that you would like to have some answers and thoughts for is, how do you actually use this? So how can brands really realize the value among these potential customers and on this platform? So a lot of brands have started testing things on social media, obviously, and also in China. So a lot of brands, as I said, Weibo started about 3 years ago, and probably, almost 2.5 or 2 years ago, we start seeing more and more brands are testing in terms of what they can do on Weibo. So the end of last quarter, so when we counted the unique fans on, the unique users on Weibo who are following brands, so there's around 300 million unique users following different brands. And the brands, mostly what they're doing, just like most of you, if you do run social media strategies in New Zealand or other parts of the world, most of it's through conversation, right? So again, this is where we feel that this is a platform. Brands can start dialogues, can start a conversation. They can also have the ongoing dialogue with consumers. So as you can see some of the stats, that's exactly what brands have been doing already. So on average, brands post 400,000 posts every day. So this is 400,000 conversations, 400,000 they initiate, they talking to the consumers. So those conversations, because of the viral nature of the platform, obviously reach a lot of audience. So we calculate that's roughly about 3.6 billion impressions in terms of how many times people see these brand messages. But I think today, although I think that's a very important part of what brands need to do and what they have been doing, But the message mainly that I want to tell you today is I don't think that's enough. I think conversation dialogues are good, and that's a huge step from the old traditional advertising already, because we started to say, oh, it's a dialogue, and that we can talk to the consumers, we can hear them, or we can respond to them. But I still think that's social media 1.0. I think what we need to move into is what I think is more about the 2.0 stage. So what do you do go beyond talking? How do you actually do the action on the social media platform? So I think two concepts I want to share with you guys. So I think the first concept what I want to share is what I call it turning fans into BFFs. So I think hopefully more and more later on we'll tell your board or tell your management not in terms of how many fans that we have and how many actually BFFs that you have. So what do I mean by here? So again, fans is the first step, but BFF, just like all of you know, probably stands for best friends forever, but you can say best fans forever as well. So I think that's can use both ways. Is because what I mean by here is just because they follow you today or they follow you a month ago does not necessarily mean they're still there and actively listen to you and actively engage with you. So only when you turn them into BFFs, so those are loyal fans, those are loyal customers. They will always want to hear from you. They'll always want to engage with you. They probably will come back to New Zealand again, right? So if they just sign up today, they say, oh yeah, New Zealand, maybe it's fun, and I follow this brand, but they don't want to hear from you again. They don't really create a lot of value for you. But if they are BFFs, they always want to interact with you. They want to come back again. They want to buy your stuff again, buy your experience again. Those are BFFs. So BFFs is much more valuable than fans. So I'll talk a little bit about how do you do that through a social CRM program. But secondly, talking a lot about this, with folks here, and including Glenn this morning, we're talking about it. I think branding, all that stuff, exciting. I used to be in the creative agency and digital agency world. It's great feeling when you come up with these very creative ideas, this inspirational brand positioning. It's important, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, I think most of you, your business wants to generate revenue, wants to generate profit. So it's more importantly, at the end of the day, how do you turn these people, whether it's fans or BFFs, into actually buyers, into actually consumers. So I'll talk a little bit more about, I think, social media platform now, like Weibo, not only provides the platform of engaging with the consumers, but also allow you to close the transaction.